Welcome to the second session where we try to answer the question, how can ICT help in restoring the well-being of people and planet? Here we talk more about possibilities and prospects. In session one, we outlined more the kind of the wicked nature of our challenge ahead in finding a more sustainable world. Where we were a bit critical maybe of ICTs and how ICTs can easily be hijacked for interests that are not necessarily in the interest of people and planet. But how then can we have a more generative and more hopeful perspective, and how can we in a more concrete way utilize ICTs underpinned by an ethic of care and responsibility towards the future. How can we do that? That's what we look at here. So the mobilization of ICT for people and planet, learning our way out of unsustainability. First, I'd like to make a point that it is critical that we balance or come to find a balance between biophilia and videophilia. Biophilia is what E.O. Wilson, I referred to him in session one already, refers to as the innate tendency to focus on life and life-like processes. And this is, as he's saying, innate. This is something that we are born with in a way, but that we tend to lose as we get older in an urbanized world where we are disconnected from our everyday experiences with life and life-like processes. It becomes more stripped from that in a way, and as a result we also have less connection with those processes and we connect less with other species, and that lack of connection can also be a foundation for a lack of caring and concern. So how to restore biophilia is an important question, especially because now we live in a time where videophilia is very strong, and that is defined as a new human tendency to focus on the less life-like processes, but more sedentary activities that involve electronic media and lead us to being glued to a screen, where we have people, young people, but also people of my generation who spend 80 to 90% of their waking hours glued to a screen. And wake up with the phone next to your bed, and first thing you do is check Twitter or Instagram or the news, whatever, and you go to bed with that too. And in between there's a lot of other kinds of screens. So and as I said in the other session, there is a whole business around mining of attention and eyeball attention and getting people to use technologies, because and you know, as Dr. Roshkov says in his interview, the NASDAQ companies, I think he says, benefit from every time we go back to our devices, but they don't benefit from people having a conversation with each other, unless of course you have your microphone on and given your apps permission to listen in on you, then they cannot even mind that conversation. So what are then more generative uses of ICT in advancing sustainability? First, I think here are 6 qualities that ICT can help strengthen. One, it needs to be embedded as a technology that complements many other ways of learning and thinking and acting and connecting. So when it's integrated in those other ways, and also in the more, and when you connect biophilia and videophilia, you get a more ecological approach of ICTs. That can be it can be powerful. I will talk about that later. A dialogical approach, if the ICTs can actually help interaction and lead to dialogue and conversation and participation and social learning, if it can mediate that, if it can support that, it can be a powerful tool. if it can invite experimenting, if it can get you outdoors, if you can make it can make you more mindful of what's happening outdoors. So instead of blocking it out, it can bring it in. How do you use your smartphone, for instance, to become more mindful of the physical world around you, or to become more mindful of other species? How can that be done? If it can increase the imagination and stimulate creativity, the ICTs can also play an important role in that. And we see examples of that popping up everywhere at the moment. The relational part, and it connects a little bit with the experiential. How can it lead to discovery, exploration in a way that you develop deeper connections with other people, with your neighborhood, with your town, with the natural spaces around you? So how can it strengthen the relationality? How can it promote a more relational way of being in the world? And lastly, empowering. If the technologies, for instance, through citizen science, allow you to collect data about yourself, your own health, about the people around you, that you are maybe together trying to green a neighborhood with, and also measuring, monitoring energy use in your home environment, using apps to increase carpooling. And so there's all kinds of potential in empowering you. That information, the data that you collect yourself, can also provide the kind of information and feedback that you need to feel confident in making change. So there are lots of options and manifestations of using technology, ICTs, in doing this, whether it's gaming, virtual and augmented reality, ICT supported citizen science, or simulations. All of these can potentially accelerate sustainability. At the same time, as I already suggested, they can also be used to accelerate something else. Entertainment, or traveling, or increase of energy use, or throwaway society. So it depends a lot on the kind of the moral compass that guides our use of ICT. That moral compass is critical. Jane McGonigal is an interesting person to listen to. Reality is broken, and we need to make it work more like a game. That's her main thesis in her TED Talk that I encourage you to have a look at, and that is also an assignment for the course to have a look at her talk, where she's basically saying we do not need to spend less time behind the screen or less time gaming. In fact, we need to have more people gaming and spend more hours, because it can lead to an enormous collective wealth of intelligence and resources, where people, when they focus on a challenge that is not World of Warcraft type challenges, but it's like a world living in a world without oil, and finding alternative ways of for instance, sustainable mobility. If you make that gaming part of a quest for a better world, a more equitable or a healthier world, it can lead to a worldwide Wikipedia of knowledge and relationships and creativity, with the right moral compass, can help us solve wicked problems. So this is somewhat controversial, because you could argue that it does lead to videophilia and a disconnect from the real world, the natural world, the biological, the ecological world around us. But this is something to discuss. She also distinguishes 4 elements that you that help you in become virtuosos, becoming excellent at doing this, and staying with the game and staying with that challenge. One is urgent optimism, which refers to the urgent desire to tackle any obstacle with the belief that there is a reasonable hope of success. Game designers always build this possibility in. It's never, the task is never too difficult. You can always succeed if you're willing to put in that time. It's a manageable goal. It's near your what you might call a zone of proximate development, to use Vygotskian Russian learning theory concept. Blissful productivity. People are always willing to work hard, going for optimization when they are given the right task where they can again succeed in. Third one is the social fabric, that when you are part of a network of people gaming, then you feel that you're in the game together and that you're part of the chain. And if you are not pulling your share or pulling your load, then you're seen as not being solidaire. There's lack of solidarity to your fellow players. And this contradicts the idea that loneliness is a result of videophilia. You can be part of a social community, even within a videophilic environment. And epic meaning, to be part of something that really matters, a quest that is, in this case, an existential quest that can help humanity survive on this planet, and it can help the world thrive instead of decline. This will be hard to read, but in the reading for this course, there's the paper that I co-authored with colleagues of mine from Canada and the US and France, towards a frame which is about, it's a review, it's a framework for designing and assessing game-based approaches to sustainable water governance. And in the paper, and I recommend you pause it and maybe enlarge this or go to the paper, you find different dimensions of game-based approaches. So does the game provide an immersive experience where you can really become an intrinsic part of the game world through visualization, for instance, and through storytelling and interactive stories. I'm not going to talk about all of these, but the complexity, for instance, the extent to which the game design mimics a real world complexity, can be higher, can be low. Flow experience is the amount of deep absorption that the game facilitates for players. Is there symbiosis between the challenges and the skills that you need to meet them? But also the level playing field. There's a relative absence in these kinds of games of hierarchy and power inequities. So this can be an advantage of game playing, where you can level the playing field, which may not always be the case in a real world setting, but people can through the game develop kind of a trust and a more recognition of each other's qualities, and in doing so they can also become more mindful of others, and the hierarchy may not be as important even in the real world setting after playing the game. Open-endedness, social capital development, sense of ownership, the extent to which the game creates a sense of individual and collective ownership in players, and finally the last one listed here, the transference of learning, the extent to which the game enables players to capture the emerging complexity of the game. Does it help them make sense of individual and isolated experience, and can they actually transfer the knowledge that they learn to other contexts outside of the world of the game? So these variables are all important, and different games will emphasize different variables, and this can help as a kind of a tool for game design, but also for understanding the nature of the game. Is it more social learning, participatory game, or is it more a standalone individual capacity building oriented game? The virtual and augmented reality is another way that can really extend experience. It can also make experience possible for those who cannot physically engage in experience. For instance, in the case of children living in an inner city who never get to go to natural beauty or to the rainforest, if you will. It is possible to kind of create these environments in a very real way, so that people do feel like they are there. Here's a project where elderly people go back to places where they were a long time ago in their youth, and it reconnects them with their past, and they can bring back memories in a very live way. And it can be very good for their mental well-being to revisit the past in that way. But it's also a way to go outside in a way, even though physically you're unable to kind of take that imaginary walk. And when that reality is augmented with clues, signs, information, it can enrich it very much. And so there are lots of ways to do this, and this is an example of kind of positive, connecting with beauty and connecting with the outdoor world. But there's also more disturbing ways. Other ways of doing this, the iAnimal tool, for instance, which has been created by animal rights groups, enable people to walk through an industrial pig farm and have a 360 experience of how pigs are raised in industrial pig farms. And this can lead to a discussion about what people think of this way of farming, whether it disturbs them or not, what are the different perspectives, how does it compare to other ways of farming, and to maybe non-meat based options for protein. So it can be conversation starters in ways that you could not do if you would not have that visualization and have that experience. And industrial pig farmers don't want people to walk through these industrial farms because of hygiene reasons, contamination reasons, or maybe they for other reasons. They don't want to disclose how the pigs are raised. So this is another way of using virtual technology, and it can be very powerful even when you warn viewers ahead of time. They do not realize how powerful it can be. So you can have a look at this iAnimal, and you have different versions of it. Another form I want to share with you is citizen science. There's citizen science that can be driven by science, and questions scientists have where they kind of outsource it to citizens to help them gather data, which is a legitimate use of citizen science. It can also be citizens having their own questions about, for instance, noise levels in the neighborhood, or where citizens want to monitor and measure the decibels produced by the traffic on a nearby road, and they do this as a network, and they actually map the noise levels at different times of the day at different spots around the neighborhood. And they work with scientists to make sense of the data, and they can use it as a pressure mechanism to influence the decision making of the local government about whether to have sound barriers or redirect traffic or to promote public transport. So citizen science that is supported by smart technology and smartphones, for instance, you can measure decibels using your smartphones if you have the right app, or you can measure biodiversity using photo voice type data collection, sharing that information with each other. Like here in YardMap, which is a US-based app from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, where they actually monitor, map local biodiversity, identify blind spots and gaps, and then identify together strategies for improving that biodiversity, continuously monitoring this to see whether species increase, what's working, what's not working. So it's part of a continuous learning journey where citizen science is instrumental. Serious gaming, I already mentioned the article earlier about serious gaming in the context of watershed management. The Aqua Republica game is one of them. I won't go to it much further, again, there's a whole range of apps and thinking about apps and designing apps that can help advance capacity building, education, learning, communication, about sustainable development is on the rise, and a lot of app designers are becoming interested in these kind of social, sustainable possibilities of the technology, where in the early generation a lot of designers were focusing on entertainment and commercialization and marketing. And now you see a shift towards the social and the educational, which you might see as a new wave in the development of this technology. I'm getting to the end now. The building of agency and transformative capacity, empowerment through the technology, where you give people the tools to monitor, measure, to communicate, and that can give them confidence, that can give them a feeling of efficacy, where they can feel effective in bringing about change and feel supported in bringing about change, where they feel that as an individual or as a part of a group, you can have impact on your local environment. And this technology can play a big role in enhancing this agency and empowerment. So let me end this second session with some conclusions for both. One, the digital age clearly is changing how we think, how we relate, how we act, and this can be a healthy change, but it can also be an unhealthy change, and we need to continuously investigate how the technology is shaping who we are and what we are becoming. ICT mediated learning can be powerful, but when there is some space for self-determination and autonomy, when it's part of a learning ecology that is also connected to peer-to-peer learning, to training, to capacity building, that is connected to citizen science. So there's all kinds of learning connecting explicit, tacit, knowledge and different, the whole person. We ended up with in session 1, that is the head, the heart, and the hands, but also being grounded and embodied is all part of a learning ecology, and we need to think about this in a more integrated, holistic way. Then the ICT can have a natural place in this kind of ecology, not as a separate standalone technology stripped from all these other possibilities. It can connect with citizen science that serves people and planet. And again, the moral compass is critical in all of this. Critical media literacy is essential. If we don't have a critical mass in society, citizens who know to check where does information come from, what is trustworthy, what is the agenda behind it, then it can also be exploited, ICT, and it can lead to things like viral nonsense and an erosion of trust. Finally, techno or videophilia can facilitate biophilia. There are lots of examples of that, but at the moment it does the opposite. So we still have a long way to go. But and I know that in this course you're designing apps and technologies that can actually help realize this, and I also look forward to seeing some of the examples coming out of it. If you have questions, again, go to the Brightspace, go to the discussion room for this part of the course, ask your questions, I will answer them. And you can always email me at arjen.wals@wur.nl. Thank you for watching, and good luck with the course and the readings that support this part of the course.